Noting the time and the presence of a quorum, I now call the Finance Committee to order. And first item on my agenda is public comments. And we will recognize Eric.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep, name and address, name and street.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a written statement and then a non-written statement. Hello, Eric, E-R-I-K, Heels, H-E-E-L-S, 17 Forest Road. I'm an associate member of the Transportation Advisory Committee, but I am speaking today only for myself. After the town election on May 5th, 2025, where voters expressed one set of opinions, I was concerned that the surveys done at the May 5th town meeting and the Select Board Summer Listening Session surveys were statistically invalid. My statistics professor at MIT was adept at explaining survey methodology, so I'm paraphrasing a couple of examples that he gave in class, quoting from an article that I wrote for the American Bar Association in 1997 entitled "The Truth About Stats and Dogs, or Why Most Surveys Are Wrong." Rule number 1, surveys must be based on samples that are random. If a survey is based on a random sample, then its results can be generalized to the population from which the sample was drawn. If it is not, they cannot. Consider the following example. On the weekend during which a movie theater is running a science fiction marathon, the movie theater's management decides to survey its audience members about what kinds of movies the theater should show in the future. Lo and behold, the survey reveals that 95% of the audience members want to see more science fiction movies. So the theater holds another science fiction marathon the following weekend and conducts another survey. But this time, 97% want more science fiction. After a few more weekends and a few more surveys, the theater is showing 100% science fiction, but oddly enough, the audience size has been steadily decreasing. Eventually, the theater goes out of business. Why? Because each survey was less accurate than the previous one, each sample less random, and it turns out that there are only a few science fiction fanatics who want to attend science fiction marathons each and every weekend. The above example may seem obvious, but others are not so obvious. Consider the City Transportation Authority that surveys its subway riders to determine how frequently people use the subway. The not so obvious problem with this survey is that if half of the city's population uses the subway about once per week, and if the other half uses the subway 5 times per week, then any survey of subway riders will always contain more of the second group of riders than the first group. In order to have a random sample, the city must survey people at a location other than the subway. So, how many of you saw the Acton spending survey that I sent out from late August to early September? So maybe about 2/3. I conducted the survey. The one that was on Dropbox? Yeah. I can speak from memory on the first slide. We'll edit this part out in post-production. I can send the slides to FinCom after. In the meantime, I can try to speak to them as I pull it up on my phone. That's all right.
I just downloaded it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the survey went out on, let's see, yes, August 22nd, and it ended on September 21st. I had a rating scale of 0 to 4, where 0 was strongly disagree with this priority, 1 is disagree, 2 is neutral, 3 is agree, 4 is strongly agree. I sent 4,035 emails, which I think is more than voted, certainly more than came to town meeting. 1,798 were opened, that's a 44.6% open rate. 236 were clicked, that's 5.8%. And 86 surveys were completed, that's 2.1%. All of those percentages are about twice industry average, and I think they would have been higher had this been an official survey done by the town. And what that told me is that people want to be asked, and then they want to be able to speak and have somebody listen. So I chose 2.0 because that's a C on a 4 scale. It's an easy scale to remember. And I calculated the margin of error using the central limit theorem and came up with a margin of error of 0.42, which means that if a question resulted in a 2, you'd have to be at greater than 2.42 in order to be confident that you're over 2 within the margin of error. So it's like when you hear a survey that says, 400 people are surveyed, 5% error rate, and if someone says, oh, well, this candidate is leading by 3%, well, that's statistically a tie because you're within the margin of error. So 2.42 is sort of a magic number for this survey. The results I ranked in order from most support to least support, and I'll just briefly run through them. The first was question number 2, which is advanced town meeting participation. I got a 2.98, which is a B minus, strong support for that. Number 8, 2.79, B minus, was continue Main Street intersection and complete streets improvements. Again, strong support for that. Question 11 is the third one. This is approve the final stormwater infrastructure plan and begin implementation. 2.76, B minus, strong support for that. The fourth is work with the volunteer coordinating committee to create a plan for volunteer recruitment. And having just gone through that process, I can say that it could probably use some streamlining. That's a 2.62 C plus. Again, pretty strong support for that. The next one is question 13, which is research and develop a proactive strategy for gas line replacement. I got a 2.59 or a C plus. I think this is the last one that is above the line. And this is question 5, which was complete the study and begin implementation of fire EMS deployment. That was 2.43 C plus. Now we come to the break-even point of 2.42. So those 6 that I just read are ones where there is clear public support statistically and within the margin of error. Yeah, so I'm about on slide 7 or 8 right now, I'd say. Scott, if you have that. Maybe just quickly scroll through those first 6 so you can see the distribution of the answers, because it's very interesting, at least to me as a survey geek, to see where the groupings fall. There were some where it's clearly off to the right. So like that's the first one. You can just, without even having to read any of the numbers, you can see that there's strong support across the board for that. Same with question 8, which is the Main Street intersection. The next one is stormwater. Again, strong support for that. The next one is number 9, which is the Volunteer Coordinating Committee. And then the gas line replacement, also strong support. And then the fire EMS deployment and the capital plan. And here's where we're at break even. So, and I've organized these from most support to least support. So the following 7 within the margin of error do not have the support of the voters. And what's the previous one? Yeah, so tax relief. It's right on the edge where it might be supported and it might not, but that's a 2.36, which is a C+. The next one is the town hall HVAC, 2.22, which is a C. And interestingly, a lot of people are neutral on that one. I don't know what to make of this one. This is a good example of where there's division. The DPW project gets a 2.02, which is a C. But you can see that there's a good chunk that are neutral, and then there are people that are strongly in favor and strongly opposed. That pattern, I think, occurs on a couple other questions as well. Yeah, similar to this one. This is the communications position. Now we're at 1.83 or a C minus. And the next one is community solar, facilitate low-income community solar. I won't go over the comments, but there's lots of comments in there. There's a slide that summarizes the comments, but solar got a 1.8 something, I forget, C minus. And then Porch Fest, 1.76 or a C minus. Again, I'd refer you to the comments to try to understand that one. And public art was the lowest rated of anything. And again, I would refer you to the comments, 1.64 or a D plus. The next slide, it would be the final slide that I want to show. And this is to say that those people whose overall grade was an A for the 13 select board priorities, they made 2 comments. The B graders made 2, the C made 10, D made 9, and F made 0. So I'm not sure what to conclude from that other than the A and B graders are greatly outnumbered comment-wise by the C and D graders. So thank you for pulling up the slides. I just have another final statement to make. There is unfortunately an art to creating an inaccurate survey, but there is an art and a science to creating an accurate survey. And the good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe it. Thank you for listening. Eric Heels, 17 Forest Road, Heels, Heels, at alum.mit.edu, Actonian since 1995.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want to have any questions on this? Go ahead, Fred.
More of a comment. Well, thank you. This is super, super interesting. So thank you for taking the time. I like where this is going, and I think we should maybe do more of that. I will note the way you did this does build in bias, though. If you want to be bias-free in a survey, you would select, here's the number of people, and then you have to make sure that random selection actually fulfills it. So there's probably quite a decent amount of self-selection even in this, though I do think it's definitely better.
Yeah, and I think that's why the margin of error was as high as it was.
Yeah, and I mean, that just takes time and money, as you are probably well aware, to go get 1,000 people to get your 95%.
Sometimes people think bigger is better, but that's not necessarily true, because if you just surveyed all the retirees, or you just surveyed all the women or all the men, you'd get a big number, but it wouldn't be a random sample.
Yeah. So anyway, I do think I agree with you. This is probably better, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I would love to get into talking about the quality of various surveys. I think it's a good discussion to have.
Well, all
And
right,
I-
maybe another finance committee meeting or afterwards.
Yeah. And incidentally, I put 100% of the comments in there, whether I agreed with them or not. And you're seeing 100% of the votes, whether or not a particular question came out the way I thought it should. So it's all there.
Just one question. So if you compared the population for this survey to the population that was taken at town meeting on a couple subjects where we did a survey, because I think there was only a couple hundred people
Yeah.
in town meeting in the survey, population-wise, how does this compare to that?
So this went out to over 4,000 people.
Yeah.
The real problem with the town meeting was that the DPW issue was resolved and rejected at the election. So a lot of the people that I recruited to the Vote No on DPW campaign, which I was forced into doing, it didn't come to town meeting. So that town meeting was like the movie theater having a science fiction movie marathon. It was an echo chamber, not a random sample.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Thank you, Eric. All right. I'm going to see if I can figure out my computer for a second. All right. So our next topic for discussion is going to be the select board discussion and the DPW scenarios that I attended at the select board meeting. And the DPW committee was present as well, where the select board approved option 4B to move forward with, which was also approved by the DPW board. And I just wanted to just have an open discussion about that, to go around the room before I make any comments or suggestions on that. Does anybody want to make any comments or suggestions on this? If not, maybe Greg, you can just do a quick summary.
Sure. The DPW Building Committee met before the Select Board, and the debate was over, do we present multiple options to the Select Board to consider, or do we just make one recommendation? And the 5 members who were there, there was a lot of back and forth. But in the process, we determined to use 3 criteria to try to narrow down the options. One of the criteria was affordability. One of the criteria was functionality. And the third one was longevity. And we know the first 2 because they were key parts of the debate back in the spring, because we had some people who said we needed new DPW building, and we had other people who said, yeah, but it costs too much. So we were pretty clear on those 2. And the reason why longevity got added to the list was because we were now looking at renovation versus new construction options. And a lot of the questions circled around, if we renovate, how long will that go before we need to do this again? And if we have to do this again, what have we really accomplished? So in that series of trade-offs, it turned out everybody ended up compromising a little. And it was pretty amazing to see people who this spring would only support new construction go for a combination of some new construction, some renovation. And that brought us down to options 3, 4A, and 4B. And then as we wrestled with, do we suggest that those three to the select board? We kept coming back to the one thing that I'd heard from this committee over the summer as we discussed this, which is we totally support the needs of the employees and the part of the facility that they're in. And as a matter of fact, 4B didn't exist in the initial Arrow Street presentation. It got there because we requested an option that said, how about renovating the garage and looking at new. 4A was the reverse. It was a brand new fleet storage and a renovated building for the employees. And strangely enough, all five of the people in that room ended up saying, you're right, 4B is probably the better approach. Now, in recommending it to the select board, we don't think this is game over. We don't think it's the last time. But we do recognize that it's hard to come up with multiple options and then look at variations of multiple options. That just doesn't work. We think if we want to push back or amend or revise, doing that within the framework of 4B is probably the right ground to fight those battles on. And we know that some people want to, quote, add back in things that aren't in 4B, and there will be efforts to do that. And we think there will also be efforts to say, yeah, but can't you still value engineer this down? So again, we're not to the point where anyone's going to put this on a warrant article for a special town meeting or anything like that. What will likely happen in terms of next steps is that there will be a warrant article for design funds presented at annual town meeting this coming spring, so May of 2026. And the amount is unclear yet, whether that's $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.5 million. I think all that is still open for negotiation and discussion. But it would be designing a more complete plan. And then the DPW Building Committee adopted a recommendation, and the select board seems open to it, which is to have a special town meeting somewhere at the end of 2026 or early 2027, in which we deal with the complexity of whatever gets presented before we go to the voters in April of 2027. That would be the working timetable. And that's based on a conversation that I had with the DPW director in Yarmouth, who basically said they did town meeting before they did the town election, and getting hundreds of people to understand the complexities of the issue before you take it to get thousands of people to vote, you have a better chance of just making the issue clearer as opposed to reversing it, which is having thousands of people vote in a environment where we don't have a local newspaper anymore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a hard path. So none of that is finalized, none of that set in stone, but that's the consensus and that's how we got there.
All right, thank you, Greg. Before I make a handful of comments, I want to see if anybody else has any comments for us. Corinne?
So, pardon me, what would be the point of the special town meeting? Would be to vote on an override before the vote, before a ballot?
No, you have to have two votes,
I
one of
understand.
which is the 2/3 for any capital expenditure.
Yeah.
That would be the special town meeting,
Okay,
before you need the majority vote if there's a debt exclusion.
right. So I don't like the idea of special town meetings for overrides because I would be worried that they would push this debt exclusion override through, and then 2 months later have a regular town meeting for an operating override. And people don't know, because if they're not paying attention, they're going to get, going to get two of them, on top of each other. And like I said, the select board sounds like they have not ruled out an override even for this spring. I know I would fight about that, but I'm just worried that like override after override, people aren't going to keep voting for them. It can't go every year and tell people there's going to be an override. I had one question about the cheapest version, because I understand that all of them involved switching over to some green energy source, whether it's air source, heat pumps, or the ground things, whatever. Why would we do that if we were doing just a renovation of a building that maybe is only going to last another 10 years? Why would we spend a premium to do that?
So the premium is on,
To install, whatever the green energy systems are. Like, they did the life cycle cost analysis
Yeah.
for the DPW building in the first place, and those solutions had negative ROI. Why would we do that in a building that's only going to last for maybe 10 years?
okay, the answer is to give us apples to apples so that we can compare all the different options.
But that's-
Was one. And two, it turned out that the heat pump option was the least expensive way to comply with the current law in Acton. Now, if you want to change the current law in Acton, God bless you, we were dealing with what we had in front of us. And so the fact that we realize that there's more to go when it comes to costing this out and finalizing the plan, there will be plenty of time to get that. But instead of saying, let's just use natural gas, we said, fine. Heat pumps is a common denominator. We get.
But the thing is, you probably
proximity.
wouldn't do that. It's like to say the apples to apples thing, if you were just renovating it, you wouldn't do that. And the other thing, as I say, is that if we're going to be handcuffed by that, we'd never renovate anything. We would just build new everything all the time, because it makes no sense to spend, I don't know how much, I don't know what the variance is, I don't know what the delta is, but to spend extra money when you might never get the payback if the building only lasts for 10 or 12 years.
So again, our longevity criteria said, if it's not lasting 30 years, why are we doing it? Because that seems odd. Now, we found that there are options to bond some renovation differently than you might bond new construction. But again, we were trying to take a look at is this going to meet the needs? Is this affordable? Is this going to last a long time? And everyone agreed that this was not their first choice. We found a consensus around everybody's second choice.
Okay, so my concern, I said, I wouldn't be looking, obviously, at spending $10 million, whatever, for something to last for 30 years. To me, I don't want to call it short money, but if the town and the schools, everybody has to prioritize, people might say, like, okay, we might have to do this cheap version now and do something better, do the big thing in 10 years or whatever. I'm just saying, like I said, when the schools are telling us it's going to be 6% a year and health insurance is going up double digits, I don't know how we can do all of it. So I'm just saying, like, that would be something that maybe we get our guy that does surveys back in here and see what people want, how would people rank those, but also in the context of possibly having operating overrides, or what are we going to do with Conant, the school reorganization, all of this stuff. There's a lot of moving parts.
Don't forget, we have the point of view to discuss, and we're going to cover everything. So you have plenty of time to comment on that. I do have one quick question on this, Greg, before I have my comments. How old is the existing structure?
I think it was built in 1968.
And we were told that it would last another 15 years. And how many years is that? From 68 to 15 years from now?
We were told it could be 10 to 15 years, yes.
So that's more than 30 years, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So
And
saying buildings will last 30 years when they're made out of concrete is kind of, like, I don't know, it just,
no, yeah, if one of the options that we had was do nothing,
yeah.
and it's not a written option on here.
Yeah.
But it was obviously discussed at the meeting. And the discussion basically centered around the costs don't go down. Every year the costs seem to go up. I did an analysis of construction costs of public facilities. And one of the funny things that happened in 2019 was Trump was president and put his first 25% tariffs in place that year. When he was no longer president in 2021, construction costs did not go down. They just stayed where they were. And we have not seen peaks and valleys, and therefore the analysis that costs will go up about 6% a year for construction seemed to hold water.
All right, thank you, Greg. I'm going to just kind of buzz through a couple items in regards to this. Let me just start. So I made the public, I've always looked at this as a staffing problem and an equipment storage problem. At the select board meeting, on the last select board meeting, during the public comments, I made the statement that the staff space in their scenarios ranged from about 5,000 square feet to 9,000 square feet. And the finance committee and the select board had agreed that the most important part of the project was to take care of the staffing. So I felt that the staffing space should be consistent across all scenarios. And more importantly, I felt like we could easily come to an agreement on what the size of the staffing should be. I felt like it wouldn't take much of an analysis. I actually offered to take some vacation time myself, as I didn't take a vacation this year, so I can burn vacation days and do the analysis myself to advise the town on what the proper spacing would be for the staff. And I think ideally, in a perfect world, from my perspective, we decide with the select board, okay, they need, let's say it's 5,000 square feet. Then you go back to the staff and say, all right, we feel like the right space for you is 5,000. Go figure out, like, here's some options how to lay it out. You guys come back and tell us how you want it to look. And because the last thing we want to do is spend a lot of money on space, whether it's renovating or building, and have it not be what the staff wants. And so this project, while it is large, I feel like it has pieces to it. And there's some pieces I think we can agree on, and then some pieces that we don't have enough information on. I also made the comment after listening to Arrow Street discuss, and the select board discuss the need for equipment storage, why we couldn't leverage potential empty fire stations, decentralize the winter equipment, send the contractors to the fire stations and start cleaning the streets instead of from a centralized location, from a decentralized location, so the streets would get cleaned faster. And Dean asked the town manager to ask Corey to get back to me with an answer to that question. I've yet to have a response to that. So I think there's a lot of questions on the equipment side, and I feel like we could get to a place on the staffing on this project. I think we could reasonably get there. And then we have questions about wash bays, whether we need them, equipment bays, whether we need them. I would like to at least like get something agreed to, because we agree that the staff needs space. They need proper space. So during the select board meeting, the select board did approve, after a long discussion, 4B. And they, kind of the request from the select board is for the finance committee to have some type of either the approval on 4B or the disapproval on the other items, however we want to say it, because they want to focus and dig into the details. And I think that it makes sense to dig into the details from the only purpose is to for the main initial purpose is to understand what the staffing truly needs for space. I don't feel comparing whatever space to the existing space makes any sense, because if we've all walked through that, it's a nested weave of hallways and misutilized space, and there needs to be a work study to see how many people are at desks and how long they're at desks. I still feel personally that if we build anything, we shouldn't be building storage space for filing cabinets, and everything should be digitized, and if there are things that need to be stored in paper, there's a building right behind here that's empty. They can move paper there if they need to store it, and have electronic copies at the DPW, and they can, run over here if they need a hard copy or something, but we shouldn't be building new space for filing cabinets. So before I go to Roland, so my final mental thought on this is I think we should make some type of commentary on 4B for the purpose and intention of getting to an agreement on just the staffing space with the select board and the DPW commission. And then we can move on to questions on all these other variables in this project that we've discussed and, had disagreement with. And the select board has agreed to have a joint session with us to discuss all scenarios which exceed what are listed on this slide. And I think at that point, we can discuss all the other types of things that, like do nothing is a scenario, and all these other scenarios, get it documented for the public, and then whenever this comes up in the future in town meeting or warrant, we can reference that discussion and say, Finance Committee does or does not support this option, and we can reference the meeting where we went through everything and had the pros and cons. That's my thought. Roland and Christie.
So if we end up closing a fire station or two, they're saying, well, we need a big building to store all the equipment inside. Well, the off-season equipment, if you have an empty fire station, it's a big garage, you can store it there. You could also use that for mechanics bays, put lifts in it. You have the height. So that's two of my thoughts. You street sweepers, you're not going to be using them in the middle of winter. Well, store them at one of the fire stations if the fire station is vacant. And vice versa, and store your winter equipment that you want to store inside that you don't use in the summer at one of those. So it's one way to save space. I still am under the admin staff, I do not believe needs to be in that building. We have plenty of office space in this town that is vacant. And I think that should be utilized. And, something could be done maybe at Conant. Move the secretarial, the admin staff over to Conant if the town acquires the building and they're not going to be using it for the schools. So I still think there's a lot of things that have to be worked out. And just blankly saying, yeah, we approve 4B without having all that analysis really done is a disservice to the taxpayers.
2 points. Quick one. If we acquire Conant with the change of ownership, it would have to be brought up to code, which if it's anything like Douglas we're looking at. Okay, Steve doesn't agree to me. I think it would.
No.
If we
sold it to the school district for $1. So I think.
Okay. I think
they paid $2 to get it back.
I think there's a fair chance we'd have to bring it up to code, which is going to be way more than the DPW will cost by I mean, we're looking here at like a third of what it would have cost to just do Douglas. And you have to believe that Conant is on par with that if you're looking at bringing it up to code. But that wasn't my main point. My main point was, what I heard you say, Scott, is the select board would like us to agree to one of the plans without knowing any of the details, so that they can then in the future say, but the select board back in whenever agreed to this plan. Is that what you're saying?
They want to eliminate options so they can focus on one to dig into.
Okay, I am happy to pick one to discuss. I am very uncomfortable with what sounds like giving a blank check on that one decision. So as long as that's not what's coming out of the meeting, which is unfortunately what I'm hearing from you.
I was in two meetings. So one was the DPW Building Committee meeting. One was, I attended the Select Board meeting because the DPW Building held another posted meeting that night simultaneously too. No, we do not have all the details that we would want. Yes, we do have a rough idea of the amount of space that is devoted to staff versus fleet storage in terms of square footage. Now, is this something you can take to a bank? No. Does it give you an idea that 4B has the least amount of fleet storage space? Yeah, because that's the rental part. And as a consequence, this 4B plan does not try to put 56 pieces of equipment into a single building. That would require a lot more square feet, and this isn't that plan. Second, staff support area. It turns out the staff support areas all range from not 5,000 square feet, but 2,750 for the
You got to
reno.
add the admin to the staff. I added the two columns together.
Oh, I see. You're putting the two together.
Yeah, I'm just
Oh,
doing
okay.
I'm
All
doing
right.
math.
All right. The net is that's where I think the value engineering can take place. Because I can look up and down this list and say, wow, we have some other plans that have smaller spaces that seem to have worked for Plan 3. Why couldn't we use that for Plan 4B? But again, the request is not vote on this article for town meeting or vote on this debt exclusion. It's if we want more information, do we want it on all 5? Do we want it on 6? Do we want it on 7? By the way, that's not viable. And so the request, I think, is perfectly reasonable, which is give us a nod that if we're going to fight, we're going to fight on this field. It's called 4B, and yeah, there's still a lot of parameters to be hassled over, as opposed to, by the way, we're not going to agree to anything.
Hold on, Greg. I just want to be 100% clear because we have had problems before with not asking, being told we did not ask questions early enough. In no way would our saying, yes, let's explore 4B further. That is our preferred, but we don't agree to it. That's what we're discussing. Okay. Well, that's what I want to be real clear before.
Well, the other thing we could discuss is rejecting all options and having no opinion on 4B.
Well, of the options that have been presented, 4B is the only one I like. It's too expensive. I'd like to pay less money. But what appeals to me is it deals with the staff issues, the maintenance issues, and puts less money towards a garage, which I don't think we need. I've never been convinced that there was an economic case for building the vehicle storage area as big as people seem to have wanted it. So in one regard, I would say I'd be happy, without endorsing 4B, I'd be happy to say I reject all the others. On another point, though, I'll tell you right now, I've never been in favor of spending a lot of money at a special town meeting, much less one late in the year. The holidays will get in the way. Unless we're talking about marijuana, we don't get a lot of attendance at special town meetings. It'll be a small group of people who decide to spend this money. And I've never been in favor of it. Corinne was saying, it's part of the big picture. Whatever the big picture is when we get to next year's town meeting, this has to be part of it. I don't like the idea of getting 200 people together on a dark night in December and spending this money.
And just one other follow-up. I don't like referencing in this whole presentation the square footage, because I kind of don't believe any of the square footage. This is why I'm starting with the staffing, because my memory from a year ago was that the staff, that the space that we walked through with the staff was about 4,800 square feet. And the company I used to work for, we had 60 people and just under 9,000 square feet. And this is much less people. And a couple of the scenarios add up to about 9,000 square feet. The rest add up to a little over 8,000 square feet. And in my company, everybody was at their desk 60 hours a week. And I don't believe that everybody in the DPW is sitting at a desk 60 hours a week. So that's why I wanted the work study and understand the staffing. So the staff space with the showers and everything, there's tighter ways of doing showers. You don't have to do, there's different ways. John Urich mentioned when he was presenting public comment at our last meeting, a couple different ways of doing that. I think that nailing down what the true space is for the staffing, whether it's in new construction, whether it's in renovated construction, or whether it's in a different location in town, I think that one number is something we can all get to an agreement on. I think the rest of it, I don't think it's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of questions. But since we've all agreed that staffing is the most important thing, why can't we just figure out a way to get to an agreement on what space the staffing truly needs? Because we can't use what they have currently as a comparison, because there's so much wasted space there. You can't count that because they got a hallway going through the middle of it. So you can't count that as office space. So I think what we could do is we can all think about this. I don't think we have to make a decision today and talk about this at our next meeting. We can all think about it and come up with some other questions and run it through, because I really want to get to the point of view, and we don't need to force a discussion or a vote on this or any opinions on this. We had a lot of valid points brought up. We don't have everybody here, so I'm sure there's a couple other opinions that haven't been heard, so maybe we can just push this to the next meeting for a discussion, because the next ALG meeting is going to be after our next finance meeting. So we will have a chance to discuss this, I think, before the next ALG meeting. So does that sound okay to everybody? If I move on to point of view? That work? Okay. All right. Point of view. So I spent a lot of time looking at point of views in the past and looking at our objective, which is to give the town guidance during the budget. And there are so many things that impact the town financials. I highlighted how I kind of wanted to approach the forecast, which I was happy people were generally on board with. The way I did this point of view was I did this as a SWOT analysis, because I felt like there's issues in town that fall into strengths. I mean, there are issues that fall into weaknesses, there are issues that fall into threats. There's some opportunities and there's some strengths. And so I have a SWOT analysis I want to run through. It ends up with a blank conclusion of recommendation. And I'm hoping that, my hope is I can buzz through this relatively quickly, that this will create discussion points and might help us get to a unified recommendation. That's the objective. So first and foremost, I went over this last meeting. We always generally start the point of view with positives. So I wanted to highlight with the school and the town, the work that people do to get grants, because as a person that's been in the town since '93, haven't paid attention to county government until the last 3.5 years. I didn't know that people were getting grants years ago. And then when I was getting involved in town government, I didn't really understand the volume of what the grants do. So I think showing the town the gross spending and then the net, I think is helpful for the town. And I think it highlights the work that the people do to get grants to pay for things or help pay for things that people in the town want, but we, probably couldn't afford without the grants. And then on the school side, I have not run this past the school team. I think I did this right. I highlighted how I took the numbers, but they're getting approximately 12% more spending than the town's paying for with their grants and their stipends and everything and their reimbursements. I want to send this slide to the school and see if they agree with me. But these are their numbers. I might have misrepresented them, but I think the story here is that between the town and the school, the people doing work to get more money into the town to pay for things that taxpayers don't have to pay for, there is a lot of work being done there. Last time I mentioned school rating, and then I heard there's a bunch of school ratings. And then I was on one of these focus group calls. Rating came up, and half the people on the call said it didn't matter, and half the people said it was the reason why they bought into town. So did a ChatGPT search on school rating, and I think the news is that we have a strong school rating, and these are the ratings that came up on the AI search, the most recent ones. All good news. And so I just wanted to highlight a positive school rating. Now I go to weaknesses. I figure I'll buzz through it and then we can go back and drive in. It'll be faster if I do it this way. So one of the weaknesses, I feel we have a challenge in the current forecast. We have health insurance, which is blowing up the budgets. There's multiple capital projects that that are justified, but there's just limited funding to support them. There's current analysis being done that's just not complete. AB Forward and this fire department station study, they could impact the forecast moving forward, but we don't know what the results of those are. And most importantly, after consecutive years of overrides that were rejected at town meeting, there is likely no relief from an increase in taxes to cover any of the expected budget shortfalls. I think another weakness is that the impact of the zoning bylaws, I feel like we probably don't have a good handle on when things are being done, what the true financial impact is, both in the short term and the long term, and understanding the max and minimum constraints on the local infrastructure and operational capacity of the town that some of these bylaws present. It's just, I have it in the weakness section because I just feel like we just need more information to do that. Another weakness I felt is maintenance. I pulled up a search on what best practices for capital maintenance were for a municipal town. And this was the listing of items for best practices. I'm sure the town does a number of these. But the fact that we have We sat in the building last week, and if you looked up at the ceiling, you saw the ceiling like needed work. We have buildings that have to be replaced because of maintenance. And I think it's a weakness. I think that there should be a best practice on maintenance in the town, because we can't afford to be rebuilding buildings because we don't maintain them, or services and capital in the town. Another weakness is how we handle what's going on with the water. I think the stormwater the catch basins, these detention culverts, all falls. Right now is being discussed is, do we fund this with taxes or fees? So how are the taxpayers going to pay for this? Or is it going to just be another fee on the tax bill? I mean, eventually the town pays for it anyway. And then the maintenance on these, there's a strategy to plan for annual maintenance, but there's, when the study was done, I think they said that there's so many of these, they can't, they can't keep, like, they can't maintain all of them. It's like you just can't afford to do it. My understanding is that the main ones that are on the main roads were dealt with the last capital fundings, so that if one were to break or be, have severe maintenance, it wouldn't be an area of detriment to the town, and could be repaired, it's kind of a wait till it breaks and then fix it type of thing. So the question here is, where should we be in this timeline, where we have the perfect culvert, one that's slightly damaged, and then one that is beyond repair and has to be completely replaced? So I feel like that's a weakness, because we don't have, I think, a clear path on that yet. Then I have some calculations. I have the point of view slide, which I need to drop in. I will drop in the latest and greatest ALG forecast. I didn't do that for tonight. I think that our forecast is the baseline forecast, and then I think that's what I think. That's, what we would, I feel we should just go with what the 2.5 increase would be, and whether the split is 70-30 or however the split is. That's just my opinion. Moving on, next 3 slides, I showed them last time. They're just town debt. I got this from the town manager. I did not create these slides. I added the little notes on the bottom of what's included. That's just the debt, just for information. Then I have the OPEB pension liability from the last report that was submitted last 3 or 4 weeks, just showing what that liability looks like. And I believe it's expected to be fully funded by 2034. So that's that. The other thing is capital planning. This is 1 of 2 slides on capital planning. This is pulled from last year's year-end report from the town manager. Clearly, it's going to be different. But laying out what capital planning is just a data point. So on to opportunities. Speaking of capital planning best practices, just listed out some strategies to do this. I'm not going to read the slide, but effectively this is best practices from not just Acton, but these are recommended best practices for capital planning. And I'm sure the town does a lot of these, but I guess kind of checking, make sure that we're doing everything here would be my comment on that. AB Forward is an opportunity. I'm in my opportunities, right? Yep. AB4 is an opportunity. We don't know what's going to happen with it. They're in their timeline and their process, but there should be some positive change created out of this. That's what I think the collective hope is. And I brought this up, and I was kind of shot down very quickly, but is there anything we can sell? Some of these properties, seriously, I mean, can we sell something? Well, we can't sell, well, maybe we should. But like, this is the listing that was in the town manager's package from the end of last year. I just grabbed it because I didn't want to type all this out, frankly. But it's a question. If we have a $2 or $3 million gap, is there something that we can sell? I was told no, but we can come back to it. I think it needs to be discussed. Threats. Affordability. Acton taxpayers are strained. If you look at the comparing the towns with similar tax bills, and you look at Acton, our tax bill is kind of in the middle of this grid here. And if you look at the per capita income of the towns around us, and then the percentage of the tax bill, Acton is higher. And if you look at Middlesex, if you take Acton out of the Middlesex County, the average tax bill is like about 10 grand, and Acton is 14,918. It's about 40% higher. So when people in the town say that they're strained, this is really why. Part two of this is looking at it just same, but just a little bit different. So if you're looking at looking at towns with similar per capita income, and comparing the tax bills, Acton really jumps off the page, except for Sharon, but we're higher, and then the towns of similar zones. So when people say that they can't afford to spend any more on their taxes, this is proof. And if you look on this chart, Boxborough's two above us on that chart right there. And then, are they on this other one too? Nope, but they're on this one. So Boxborough residents strained as well. Then home values can go down. It can happen. There are parts of the country that are facing big decreases in property values. But when the property value goes down, the town can still raise revenue next year. But what will happen is the tax rate per thousand is going to jump back up probably to what it was, a handful of years ago. It was in the 20s. And it caps out, I think, at 25. You can't go higher than that, I think, if I read things correctly. So that is my blast through of the SWOT analysis. I try to cover a bunch of things that I think are driving the town's financial information. And in the back part of this, I had a bunch of slides that I had in before. I just put them in the back. So I have other slides that I just moved to the back of this. So I will now entertain questions. Roland?
So as I've mentioned in the past, we have that house sitting down at Morrison Farm, which you had on your, so the bottom one on the right-hand side of your things we could sell. And what I think they need to do is carve out a lot out of that, rejigger how they go into Morrison Farm for parking, and turn that over to Habitat for Humanity and get it back onto the payrolls. Get it onto the tax rolls. It doesn't have to be at full. It's something that is an asset that is not generating anything. It's depreciating every day that it sits there and it's vacant. It doesn't, so you keep losing value. So a low-income family would love to have something like that. And it's been done in other areas of the town. And I don't see why we can't do it with that house. I've been saying that for a couple of years. So you don't get a big giant lot, but you get something, and you get a family that could use affordable housing, and that's one way to do it.
Fred and Christie.
like, if we're trying to maximize the asset, why wouldn't we carve it out and then, I don't know if that's a historic building, and I'm not familiar, but like, knock that down and build something that can actually like generate some significant taxable revenue.
So it's on Morrison Farm on Concord Road.
Oh, I know exactly where that is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could just, if you knock it down, you'd have nothing then. You have, it's part of Morrison Farm. That lot is owned by the town. That whole thing is owned by the town. So if you carve it out as an individual house lot, you donate to Habitat for Humanity, and then they could get a family in there, renovate it, get a family in there, and then it gets back on the tax rolls as generating tax roll revenue. Now it's generating zero.
I understand that, but there's a lot of land over there, I was just saying.
Yeah, but
Thinking bigger.
you wouldn't carve out, you just carve out just enough for the house lot, basically.
Oh, okay.
Who is the audience for this slideshow?
In my perspective, I'm trying to inform the people in the town what our point of view is.
The average townspeople?
Yeah.
Okay, way too much text, way too many tables, and long sentences.
And what'd you say, the last
And
sentence?
long sentences. If you put a sentence up, someone will read it. It's why I can't watch shows we have dogs, so sometimes I'll put on the subtitles. I can't watch I can't watch the show because I'm reading the subtitles. I'm happy to help you.
Well, yeah, I know how to condense things, but if I don't start with everything, I can't
Gotcha.
bring it back. If I start with a very condensed thing, and
Okay.
people are gonna say, well, why didn't you put this in, and why didn't you put that in?
Because I would love to get back to being able to present this to PTSOs
Yeah, I
and
do
senior
too.
center and stuff like that. This is a slideshow for presenting to the select board, et cetera. But if you
Yeah,
are
so,
set to do that.
let me rephrase. So my point of trying to structure it in the SWOT analysis is to put a framework around the items being discussed before a conclusion.
Yep, I'm all for that.
And what goes into each piece, I think, needs to be meaningful. And I tried to throw some pieces in there that I thought fit. They don't have to be in there. We could put something different in there. But if I don't start with something, we can't get anywhere. So that's why I have it this way.
Yeah, my two changes would be water, to me, says something different when you're talking stormwater, because
Okay.
we do have water questions in
Okay?
the town in general, and I think it muddies the waters. Sorry, it's where I started, to have this slide in here, because you're talking about one-time sale, and we have ongoing budgetary issues. So do we want to get into misleading people with the idea that we can get enough one-time money to get us out of bigger problems?
Well, I was pretty much told that we can't sell anything. And
Oh, yeah, yes, I believe you.
Yeah.
But even if we could, that's only one-time money.
Right, but we have some things that are, so let's say hypothetically, AB Ford saves money. Let's say hypothetically that whatever the fire department does somehow saves money. Maybe the budgets are better next year, and maybe we do need one-time money. I guess that's kind of where I'm getting at. Like, whatever the school does is not going to happen overnight. Whatever savings, if they find savings, it's not going to happen overnight.
Okay, so you're saying one-time money to bridge the gap?
Right, to bridge us between wherever we are, primarily with the schools, because I feel like the town budget, outside of health insurance, I didn't see any issues with it. But, like, let's say the school needs, let's say, $2 million. I think we could sell something to get to $2 million. That's kind of where I'm coming from, and that's why I had this in here.
Do we want to include, you made a comment, Steve, at the meeting last week about the budgets really need to be reflecting needs, necessities, how did you say it? You said like.
Essentials.
Essentials, right. And do we want to throw some things out there that may not be essential? Subsidized daycare. As DEI and sustainability departments in both the schools and the town. Just off the top of my head.
Well, I guess my own personal take on that is, we're looking at what, $4-ish million problem? I think if we just did what you said, I don't think we're making a dent in it.
So are we talking just about town, or are we talking about town and schools?
Well, right now, we have a town and school budget problem.
So the schools, they could go back to actually charging tuition for kindergarten. They could start taking money from PTOs again to help pay for classroom assistants. They cut off a source of revenue when they did that. I'm always asking questions about the school budget. There's all sorts of stuff in there I don't think we need, and I think it's actually harmful to students. But except it's, if you don't tell people, that people don't know what's in the budgets, and they might scratch their heads like, why do we have the same function at the town and the schools? I think those are questions to ask.
Yeah, so last week when we all sat in the room as committees, we saw this forecast from the school district out to 2031 now. I don't know if they're any better at predicting the future than anybody else. At least a month ago, I said, where's the town's version of this? I would hope by the next time we meet, there's something. Because it is the single biggest weakness and threat that we have, which is the cost escalation. And maybe this is the worst case, I don't know. But the fact is, the revenue case is anemic compared to the cost growth. And selling assets is a one-time thing, and you're right, I don't know that we have that many that we can sell. So when I look at this problem and how to communicate it concisely to the voters, I just kind of see, a graph with two lines, the projected revenue and the projected costs and the ever-growing gap. Now, AB Forward could come up with a couple $1 million. But the gaps get bigger than a couple million. The last ALG plan had next year's at 4 million. It may not be that bad, but then the year after that and the year after that get worse. And this one didn't even assume the worst case, like healthcare keeps going at current rates forever. I think they cut it down to maybe 9%. The fact of the matter is, until a couple of years ago, it was clipping along at 4%. Not 12, not 15, not 9. And it's a big piece of the pie. So I think what we have to convey in terms of weakness or a threat is we don't have a revenue model that can match the cost model that we currently have and project into the future. Like I said, I don't know what you call it, a threat or a weakness, but we're essentially a business that doesn't have enough pricing flexibility into our product to cover the cost of making the product.
The grants are a strength, but I would also consider them potentially as a weakness or a threat as well, because the grant landscape is changing every single day, and grants are being cut off. They are being, at the federal level anyway, they're being cut off, they're being rescinded, they're being clawed back. And there is a lot of churn for what could potentially be available next year and the year after that. And so in mentioning that, I'm thinking more like what external factors would we like to have a point of view on from a threats and or weaknesses standpoint? I think grants, the current economic climate, or because we can't predict the future, obviously, but there is a lot of churn out there, especially with the government shutdown and how much longer is it going to go on? What are the long-term ramifications of that? And then also on a more micro level, on the local level, I'm thinking, when the prison is developed And they're attracting new businesses there. You know, across the street, you've got the Chipotle and the Starbucks, and it's bringing more businesses to Concord. More people might be moving in there. How do we look at that too? What's our point of view there? I mean, I think I would include that in the presentation.
So I could just take the intern's presentation and tack it right in here for Stephen Starr on his impact to MC at Concord on Acton, which I thought he did a nice job on. All right, so,
What are your thoughts on other external factors?
Yeah, I
More of a
think-
question.
since, to trying to avoid open meeting law violations, I didn't really discuss how I tackled this since the last meeting with everybody. I can send this deck around to everybody, and if we could, if we could all kind of work together to come up with items that fit into the buckets, and then we can discuss maybe at the next meeting our conclusion. That makes sense? Because I think I like the structure of a SWOT analysis in presentation and talking to and communicating to people, because just going through slides and reading numbers to people, I feel like they get glass-eyed and they don't pay attention. But when you put in this framework, and obviously I agree with you, Christy, being concise and to the point on which items are presented, but I feel like it will make for a tighter communication, and a tighter communication with structure is going to inform the public better, so that when they go to town meeting, they will have better information when they're voting on everything that's in front of them. So that's kind of the goal. So I can do that. Last time I tried to send this around, it was too big for the email, so I'm going to have to price. I'll load all this stuff up on the SharePoint site. Does everybody know where that is? I will send the link. You'll have access to it. It's on the government site. It's where all the select board meeting materials are. It's all where all the ALG meeting materials are. It's all the historic FinCom materials. I'll send a link to everybody, and anybody that listens to this online can have access to the same information. And then if you can, feel free to stay within the same format I have and just do a slide and send it back to me, and then we can go through them, at the next meeting, and then try to get this buttoned up before the ALG meeting. And by then, we'll have some feedback from Jason between now and then as well. That makes sense? All right, I'm going to move on then. We're not going to be here till midnight. That's good. Slides we're not using, or maybe, I'm leaving them in here. If you fall in love with one of them, you can use them. Liaison reports. Corinne, can you do the select board meeting?
Sure. So they talked, I think the ones that are of interest to us, the DPW building, we already did that. All right. They talked about, and this was something that came up in that survey, about recruiting more volunteers. So that was the topic of discussion. And also about bringing more people to town meeting, again, one of the goals. I thought they had some good ideas in that one, including having like an open house before, so people can come in and ask questions of the people, about the articles, and have people there so that so people can show up to town meeting informed. I thought that was a great idea.
Can I just add on that, because Alyssa was the only one that said it. Going back to presenting as an option is a Saturday meeting for town meeting instead of doing it on the weeknights and getting home at midnight, having like a Saturday morning and afternoon session.
So, okay. The thing about this, they said no matter what day you do it, there's always problems, right? I personally don't think there's a problem with people being unable to get to a meeting. 2,800 people showed up a year and a half ago. If there's something that's important to them, they will go there. Those very same people that packed the gym, that had never been there before and will never go again, were complaining this past year about a leaf blower ban being passed. It's like, you didn't go to the town meeting. They can get there, they just don't want to. So I feel like no matter what they do, I don't think it's going to change attendance. That's my personal thought. But I do like the idea of getting a lot of information out there beforehand. And that might generate more attendance and more informed, people showing up to vote. I thought it was a great idea. The other thing they talked about was the ALG update. So they did an update about that. They talked about the $4 million deficit. And maybe you're going to talk about that when you do your ALG liaison thing. But David was making some suggestions that I think are in line with what you have in the point of view, is saying like the ALG has to come up with the ALG should be recommending the split and then telling the town and the schools, go work with this, instead of having it be this like unknown thing. And, and I guess I didn't realize that was a practice that had gone away. I thought that was always what ALG did, and I guess they haven't done it in a few years. So I think that recommendation is in line with what you're proposing in the point of view. And again, I think, like I said, the one thing I heard was that, they have not taken an override in the spring off the table. So that's all I had from them.
So, Minuteman, member towns, the budget is, the assessment is going to be a reduction to all member towns. Total reduction was $47,625 across the board, of which Acton will be getting $6,636. $6,636 less on the assessment due to additional Chapter 70 funds that was received by the school. One of the discussions on the meeting was, well, why don't you just keep that money? And if they had to do that, they'd have to go to every single town, would have to have a special town meeting to go, and so they could keep the money. So they said they're just going to refund it to the towns. They're going to lower the assessments. On January 13th, their finance committee's presentation to the school committee for the future. And one thing they're looking at is capital planning and how much they need for future and how to fund it going forward. Because even though it's a new building, you still need to maintain it, and there's still capital needs of the school for different various things. And also, and if they mentioned it the other night, but the Chapter 70 formula is being redone by the state, and there's some things going on around that right now. So I know they mentioned it the other night at our multi-board meeting, so something to be aware of. And also on the capital planning, our old town manager, Steve Ledoux, is a special advisor to Minuteman.
On capital plan.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting, as he's involved in the Concord town of some sort. So anyway, that's my update.
You've heard about the DPW building committee and also the school committee that what happened last Thursday. That's where they came up with the projections, which I forwarded. What?
I'm sorry, I thought you were starting to talk about it. School committee is in a hole, largely driven by insurance. AB forward, even if it happens this year, is not going to get us out of that hole. There is no amount of tightening they can do with restructuring that will get out of this ongoing, unmaintainable increases in insurance that are coming. It does not sound like this is being talked about very openly for the sort of what I perceive as emergency that it is for this upcoming spring. $4 million is a big gap to close. The school has, and that's between school and town, but the school has very little left to cut. They have done so much cutting in the last few years. And this is where I think the idea of a set split really breaks down, because there are going to be times when we need to shift one way or another because of stuff that comes up. So school committee dealt with that a little. There was a lot of pushback. One person said, well, we just need to ask for all the money we need, and their general leadership said, no, we can't. Boxborough can't handle it, Acton can't handle it, there's no stomach for it. So something has to happen here Similarly, with the, when they looked at the AB Forward ideas, have you all seen? Okay, that's right. I think there's finally a recognition on the school committee that something really does need to change. Status quo is not acceptable. But like I said, it's not going to be enough. And school committee is coming around to understanding that. I spoke with school committee chair. The $17 million number being batted around is, if they mothballed the building, it would be much more than that to bring it up to code. If it's continuously occupied, say they moved community ed or someone over there, it does not need to be brought up to code, which means 17 million is probably a reasonable number. If you have to bring it up to code, I still don't see a reason why it would cost less than the 90+ million it was going to cost to redo Douglas when we were looking at that, and that was 7-8 years ago that we were getting that number. So I think we're looking at more potential savings in anything that moves us out of Conant, which is not as baked into the numbers as we're looking at. And those numbers are a little confused. I've been asking for kind of a broadly, what does a school cost? Because they're talking about significant savings if you reduce the numbers of elementary schools, which is a little weird because, okay, how could you figure a principal to assistant principals, the staff shouldn't be that much different. But if you have a larger school across which you can spread increased class sizes, right now, if they wanted to, in McCarthy Town, increase up to 25 in a class where they have, I don't know, they don't have 20. But if they had 20 and they wanted to go up to 25, that's not enough shifting to take 3 classrooms down to 2. There isn't, they cannot take all the 1 classrooms with the kids and spread them across the remaining classrooms. So you cannot get rid of a teacher or a classroom. If you have 7 classrooms, because you've got 2 schools worth of second graders there, you have enough capacity to do that and make, lower your staffing in an appreciable way. You also have opportunities to utilize specialists better, both reading, special education type specialists and art, music, et cetera. These are things that came out of the previous consulting one. Is a big way that we across the district can save money by moving things to fewer buildings. It lets us improve that. Same with everything they've been talking about, as I understand, is moving on to the same schedule, which facilitates a better use of staff. It's all staff reductions, but that's how we're able to see continuous savings from some of these changes. That's it.
Can I just have a clarification question? Which you were just referencing, in the AB Forward package, there's that one scenario where they have K through 3 together and then 4 through 6. Is that what you're referencing when you're talking about was that what you're just talking about there?
Yes, there were a few models that did that. The second you have enough grades within a certain school that you can move kids around to decrease the number of classrooms, you just get such efficiencies.
Yeah, it's easier to go from 7 to 6 than it is to go from 3 to 2. If you're trying to balance the number of kids, let's say in a 3rd grade class. And so one of the interesting things that they discussed, which I think is a first for a long time that I've heard, is class size. So that was always a verboten topic, and they're looking at that, and they're trying to figure out which of the configurations gives them the long-term flexibility to deal with demographic shifts. You know, if population goes up, what do we do? If the population goes down, what do we do? Again, they have a lot more flexibility if they have fewer, bigger buildings than if they have, what they now have is 6 schools in 4 buildings.
I'm sorry, I had one more thought there. I don't remember what it was. I see that Corinne has a question.
I was just going to make one comment. It was something that, it's about the Conant School. I went to the forum at the high school a couple weeks ago, and there was language, I guess, in the regionalization agreement that says, if the district no longer needs a building, the town shall buy it for $1.
What I was saying is that,
You'd have to bring it up to code. Is that what?
yes,
Are you 100, it seems crazy to
that-
me that they'd say you have to buy this for $1 and you have to pay $50 million to bring it up to code.
those are two completely different things.
But you know what I mean? It's like inheriting a liability. So I'm just throwing that out.
I
That's-
mean, but that is inheriting liabilities. I don't know, I had not heard this about it possibly not being the case, but if I were to sell you a building for $1,
But I wouldn't have, in this case, I wouldn't have the choice of not buying the building. It's the town shall pay $1. The town shall buy the building for $1.
that is not on the table right now.
I'm just saying, if the decision is made to not use Conant, the town shall buy it for $1.
And the town would not need to use it if it had to be brought up to code. I'm sorry, I lost it again.
The point I was trying to make is in whatever it was, 2015, the town sold Conant to the district, and there was no upgrade. It was in more, it's probably not as bad.
It has to be continuously in use in order to not have to be brought up to code. So as Conant was there before, we just switched to, owned it underneath, the use did not change.
Well, somebody other than us probably knows the
Oh,
answer to
yeah,
the question.
and I don't, this is not on the table. Right now,
My understanding was that if you spent something like, if you had to spend more than a third of the value of the building, then it all had to be brought up to code.
Yes.
It didn't have much to do with use.
I think this board, this committee, can take a lesson from what the school committee is doing. And as we finish crafting our point of view, one of the things that they are getting to, or at least we hope they are, and I think all the evidence that I've seen shows that they are, is what's the path forward? So when we get to the bottom of our point of view, whether it's a strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat, what the town is going to want from us is what's our path forward? And that's going to be hard, and there will be difficult trade-offs, but I think that's what we're going to have to buy into as well.
Okay. Thank you. I guess my liaison point for ALG has been kind of referenced in bits and pieces. The budget was reviewed. I had requested that the school change their forecast for health insurance, which they did. I have not digested those numbers, but I'm sure they're better than what was originally presented, which was double-digit growth in the out years. There was discussion about an appetite for an override, and I think my memory of the meeting was that the discussion was more leaning towards the expectation was that there would not be an appetite for an override, and that we should be thinking about moving forward from that perspective. But I probably would need to re-listen to the meeting to get that exact, so I may not be perfect with those statements. And the next ALG meeting is going to be the 19th of November, and I think that's kind of all I have for ALG. We've talked about a lot of the other things already. Any other liaison reports? Are we good? Now, next health insurance trust meeting's Thursday, so I have no update on that. Right now, I think our next meeting technically is on Veterans Day, which we can't meet. We can either meet faster or I think we need to meet before the ALG meeting, which is on the 19th. I gotta get a calendar up to look at it. I think meeting next week is too quick.
The 18th and the 25th. Or the 18th and skip the 25th. Little birdie just whispered in my ear.
How about the 10th? I know, it's a Monday, yes. It wouldn't be here, but. Monday, the 10th? Or any other day that week.
Does anybody in the audience have the select board calendar and know if they're in this room on the 10th, just per chance? Yeah. Yeah. Hey, don't all push up to the podium at the same time.
The select board meets on the 3rd and the 17th of November.
Yeah, so we could do the 10th.
Well, it is a no-school professional day on the 10th, and then it's Veterans Day on the 11th.
Oh, so we're all going to be,
There'll be a lot
a lot of people gone.
A lot of people gone, I suspect.
Yeah.
Because it's a 4-day weekend for a lot of families.
Yeah, and I think I'm taking a 4-day weekend myself. But I'd happily come back for this meeting, happily.
We need
Yeah.
to meet that week.
What's going on the 12th that week? We never met on a Wednesday before, but maybe we meet on the Wednesday. We may have to meet at my house, but we'll see how that goes. I'll invite Acton Cable, see if they can get through the front door.
If we're not meeting here, ActonTV prefers that we go there.
Yeah,
Just,
I'm fine with going there. And we'll see if we could maybe do the 12th, and then we do the 12th and then the 25th.
The 12th looks open on the Acton calendar.
I can inquire. Inquire on the 12th. And I had sent around the annual calendar for next year. No one has sent me any edits. I might, because that's going to be your problem, Roland, if the dates are screwed up. I'm just going to submit that in, and then you can adjust it. Because I was told I should submit that in right away to get the rooms. All right. I suggested moving all of our meetings someplace else, but I'll see if you can identify that. All right, so I'm going to see if let's plan to meet on the 12th at 7:30 and place to be determined. And we'll stay on schedule for the 25th, because that makes sense. We have to meet before ALG, and we should meet right after ALG. I think that makes sense. And the select board, David's the 10th and the 24th?
3rd and the 17th.
3rd and 17th?
the 25th is the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. Just,
You want to go to the 12th and then?
no, the 25th works for me. I just want to say if,
Oh, I know it is. I know it's
it's fine for me.
It's Thanksgiving week. I understand. Yeah,
We actually often end up meeting that Tuesday.
yeah.
That usually falls on that we have a meeting
Yeah,
that Tuesday.
we'll do the 12th, try to do the 12th. And select board's 3 and the 17, all right. All right, I think I'm good. Fred, you're up.
I watch these sometimes, and they do for notes, so just make sure to say it in the microphone.
Yep. Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, please say yay.
Yay!
Yay!
We are adjourned. Thank you.